Welcome into another edition of Sport Ball. I'm your boy Sam. With me, as always, are my two just people that I admire the most in my young life.
Wow, thank you.
Seth, Kyle, and Lin-Manuel Miranda. Pleasure to be here.
It's probably the best compliment I've gotten in years. And I still don't believe it, so.
How are you guys?
It's March Madness week.
Well.
March Madness, baby. I am pumped. I was telling them off the air right before this, it might be my favorite sporting event of the year. Of the whole year. Except the Masters, obviously, because I won one Masters fantasy tournament.
I mean, I think it's hard because, like, what are the boundaries of a sporting event? Like,
what's the Mount Rushmore?
Why do you always do this?
Could you say the
Mount
entire
Rushmore's all
like
the time? What's the
NBA
Mount Rushmore
playoffs?
sporting events?
I would say it goes NBA Finals and this neck and neck, and then Super Bowl.
Why is it just the finals? March Madness is the whole tournament, so wouldn't it be the whole NBA playoffs?
I don't know. I just thought of this 5 minutes ago.
And I'm just asking now, what's the Mount Rushmore sporting events?
My favorite
March Madness.
My favorite like day or 2 days is the second round of the NBA playoffs.
It's interesting
because there's still lots of games, and usually they're really good because, the first round it's usually like the one seeds win, and then the second round is like you get the really good matchups, and there's like multiple games every day. So
I am particularly bullish on NFL Week 7.
Intriguing.
That's a good one. We've got just enough sample size from the season to really know who teams are.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Fair.
That's why I love it. So we will talk March Madness today because our listeners crave it. Kyle's going to really crank this podcast back out by the time brackets start playing. So you'll have some info.
Wednesday drop.
You'll have some info. Look for it Wednesday. You'll have info in your pocket.
Look for it today, the day that you're listening.
Exactly. Are you listening right now? It must be Wednesday.
And look for it.
So, but we're going to save that to the end to entice the listeners to really string them along for the entire podcast. First, we're going to hit the NBA, our bread, our butter. We know what side our butter's bread on. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know if you guys know this, but the NBA trade deadline is fast approaching. It is on the 25th of March this year because we have this weird 72-game season. So we're going to go over our most interesting teams to watch at the deadline and kind of go over, what would we do if we were their GM? Would we be buyers? Would we be sellers? It must be mentioned that the seller pool is quite smaller than it has been in years past because of this play-in tournament, right? So now you have 10 teams in each conference making the playoffs, and then you have the 2 to 3 right behind the 10 seed that think they can, get in there, right? So it really whittles down the number of sellers at the deadline. With that in mind, let's just jump right into it. I had everyone pick their own teams that they want to talk about. Seth, let's start with you with the Sacramento Kings of California of Anaheim.
Yeah, Sacramento was actually one of my favorite teams growing up. I love the C-Web era Kings, and it's really just been a shame to see this whole franchise take a nosedive ever since then. So putting myself in the seat of the GM, if you will, it's a really tricky position to be in. So at the taping of this podcast, they're at 15-24. So really just not looking good for them in the standings. And
they're 13th, right? Now they're only above 2 teams.
They've had some major blow-up, like fourth quarter blow-ups too, like recent, like within the last.
2 against the Hornets, actually, right?
Yeah. So they're just giving up leads. It feels like typical Sacramento things where they just don't have a winning culture. It seems like on paper they should be pretty good, and I kind of like all their players. Obviously, the biggest star on their team is De'Aaron Fox. I think we all like his upside and think he'll continue to grow. I love Rashawn Holmes, who shoots, I believe, 85% on push shots, which are these little, like, almost floaters, like middle of the lane few steps in from the free throw line. He's just got that shot down. And then, of course, Kyle's boy, everyone's boy, really. He was Sam's boy first, I think, Tyrese Halliburton.
I gave birth to him, but I gave him to Kyle to raise.
Sam probably couldn't even tell you what college he played for.
Iowa State. Come on now.
Oh, immediately.
I'm really honestly quite surprised, but that's probably because I told him before the draft happened where he was coming from.
Hey, when we had our draft podcast, you can check the receipts. I said I want the Bulls to draft Tyrese, my boy. But I like Patrick, so I'm okay with it. Anyway, tell us more about the Kings, Seth.
Yeah, so I think the conventional idea would be they should be sellers and try to get what they can for either Harrison Barnes, Buddy Hield, or both, because those are younger players who have a lot of good skills that contending teams would want, and they don't really fit the timeline of the team, apparently, since the Kings clearly aren't going to win this year. I think if you get a really good offer for either of those players, you got to do it. And if you can get like unprotected draft picks, you got to do it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be in a hurry to sell them just to sell them. I think the Kings just, whatever is in the water there in Sacramento.
It's Luke Walton.
Honestly.
He's not long for that team, I don't think.
I hope not. Fuck Luke Walton.
Yeah.
So obviously that's one change that they can make is coaching. But I also think they just need to start winning games. And even if you can get like above 500, and they were the 1 year the Celtics had their draft pick, they had like a great season. But other than that, I just feel like all of this, the culture of losing is not really helpful. And even when they do get a good draft pick, I don't really have any confidence that they're going to pick the right person anyways.
Yeah.
Right? It feels like a few years ago when they had the third pick and then they took Marvin Bagley, or was it second pick? They took Marvin Bagley.
Yeah.
And like that was their chance. If they had made a smart pick there, if they had taken Luka.
Right.
Well,
it should be mentioned that Bagley may be one of the worst players in the league right now.
Vladdy had qualms with Luka's father, I'm pretty sure, so can't draft that.
Well, now they're having problems with Bagley's father, so out of the frying pan into the fire, it seems.
And I mean, it obviously multiple teams like missed out on Luka and should have taken him, right? But they also could have gotten Jaren Jackson Jr., Trae Young, even like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, either of the Bridges, Michael Porter Jr., even like Dante DiVincenzo would be better than Marvin Bagley at this point, right? So yeah. I just feel like
they almost had Dante.
That's true. They almost traded for him. Yeah.
True. So it's like I don't really have any confidence that if they try to do a full like blow it up, let's just get rid of Hield and Harrison Barnes to try to get some draft picks and really rebuild, tank. I just feel like they're probably not going to pick the right players anyways. So they might as well figure out the best with what they have now. If they get a big offer, like great. And the other thing is like, can you swap Bagley for anything of value? Maybe a team buys in and says, well, he's a top draft pick. He just needs to change the scenery. Like maybe what they need is more of those good players now. Not that it's going to turn around their season, but at least next year they could be competitive if they get a new coach and maybe have another one or two more like solid veterans that can at least lead them into like contention for the play-in game. And it's obviously hard in the West, but I just feel like the Kings as a fan base and as a franchise like need some kind of scrappy team to cheer for that'll like maybe sniff at the playoffs.
I mean, they have good players, like you said. I think what I would do is, first of all, I'd fire Luke Walton. Secondly, I'd trade Buddy Hield because I think he has a lot of value, more than Harrison Barnes.
Yeah, he may know
about everyone needs shooters, right? And then I would just put Tyrese in the starting lineup. Tyrese, Fox, ride with Barnes as well. I would try to trade Bagley if he has any value because Rashawn is just better, right? Bielitsa doesn't even crack the rotation anymore. He still has value. I'd get rid of him too.
It's a shame.
So I think they
Get rid of
still can
Bagley,
sell
play-
and remain pretty good, right? Or still retain their best players. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I saw the prospect of possibly John Collins, and that would be a delight, in my opinion. If you can get, Rashawn and John Collins on the court at the same time as both De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese, you have two big men that are really good in the pick and roll, two guards that work extremely well in the pick and roll. That could be extremely lethal.
I would like that for them for sure.
Well,
and that
I'm
kind
hearing
of
all
fits
this.
that bill where it's someone who's good, still young, obviously, but already established.
I think we need to talk about, though, Harrison Barnes is quietly become an extremely good and valuable player. I know, Sam, you said that Buddy Hield's better than him. I don't think that's true.
I think he just has more value because he's a shooter, but I think Harrison
Barnes affects the game much more than Buddy does. But I
almost feel like Harrison's a more winning player than Buddy, right?
He has the finals and the finals experience and everything too, which obviously we thought he was kind of just a product of the Golden State Warriors, which pretty much, when they were at full health, that's essentially what he was. But a couple of years later now, and here we are, Harrison Barnes contributing to one of the best contributors on a middling team that can be a playoff team if they had the right, surrounding players, infrastructure, and coach. Yeah.
Seth, I told you the other day that I think Barnes would be the perfect fit for the Celtics, even more than Vucevic. Do you agree with that?
No. Let me tell you why. I mean, I would love to have either one of them, and I'd be happy with Barnes, but I don't think he's the playmaker that we need.
I beg to differ.
Okay. And obviously, if they do trade him to the Celtics, I'll immediately think he's like one of the greatest playmakers in the league. But I mean, he's averaging 3.5 assists a game. Like, for a wing, I feel like I would want that to be a few ticks higher. And I think Vooch is someone you can really run your offense through, where he is essentially the Magic's entire offense. I feel like Barnes is more of a complementary player, and we already have so many really good complementary players where we'll just end up with the same kind of issue where it's your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn kind of thing.
Yeah.
What we really need is someone who makes other players better on the team. And I don't know if Harrison is quite at that point. He's someone who exceeds in his role and excels in his role, but I don't think he makes his teammates that much better. And I think Vooch he's not your prototypical Steve Nash kind of player, Vooch, but you can run the offense through him. So
yeah. I want someone else besides Semi Ojeleye playing those minutes. That's kind of where I was coming from. But all right, we're 15 minutes and we've only talked about the Kings, so let's move on. Kyle, let's talk about the first team that you were tasked with, the Houston Rockets. Your boys, Sans Harden, trying to find their way in the wilderness, lost 15 straight, 14th in the West. It would seem that Victor Oladipo and PJ Tucker would be the players that they are selling if they do, correct?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of what we've seen in the majority of talks around the Houston Rockets. We kind of wondered why they got Vic in the first place. Obviously, it's so that they could flip him and try and get some additional assets. Is what it seems right now. We haven't seen Christian Wood in what seems like months at this point. They're on a 16-game losing streak without Christian Wood. But I like that the upside that they could have when Christian Wood is fully healthy, with John Wall and with Kevin Porter Jr. Kevin Porter Jr. has flourished the last 3 games since he's been called up from the G League. He showed out in the G League. I think he had the first triple-double of the G League this year, and I think his first game in the G League. He looks great. He kind of looks like the prospect that we expected Kevin Porter Jr. to be when he was
It's never
drafted.
been an on-the-court issue with him, right? We always know the talent is there.
Yeah, it's always been kind of a mental thing, off the court issues like you mentioned. But I think obviously they're in the West. They're in the tougher division of the two. So it's going to be tough within the next year or two, no matter what. But I think trading Vic and being able to get either a young player back and a draft pick or a higher draft pick, and then using that to build around Kevin Porter Jr. and Christian Wood is something that really excites me, mainly being a Kevin Porter Jr. and especially a Christian Wood fan. So they're obviously sellers. They have nowhere to go but up, really, in the Western Conference. Victor is not part of the long-term vision, as it seems.
Okay, but why isn't he, though? My question is, if you're going to choose to trade for Victor Oladipo over Karis LeVert, and it must be said over Ben Simmons, now you're just going to flip him at the deadline for James Harden, so you got nothing? No single player for James Harden?
Hopefully they get picks, which is what they need. They had like no picks. How are you supposed to do any type of rebuilding without any picks? So
okay, but we can't come on one of our previous pods and lambast them for not taking Karis over Vic or taking Ben over Vic, and then come on this podcast and say we think they should flip Vic, and that'd be a good move for them, right?
Well, at this point, I think it's a good move. Obviously, Karis, I still think would have been the better option. I mean,
so you're saying now that they have Vic in house and they made that mistake, the best way to rectify it is to trade him for picks.
Yeah, and who's to say that they wouldn't have been trading Karis for picks too?
They probably would have.
Exactly, because Karis is on a much friendlier deal. It would have been easier to ship him for better picks, but I don't know why we'll never know why they made that call in the first place. But I think that they probably would have ended up trading either one of them, especially after Christian Wood got injured and their whole season just completely tanked. They have nothing to play for now.
Seth, if you were a contending team, would you want Vic? Or would you want PJ? It all depends on your situation, right? But do you think either of those players offer value to a contending team?
Didn't even mention PJ, but he's out.
It's interesting to think about who Victor Oladipo is. Like when you look at his basketball reference, right, there is the one All-Star year, which was back in 17-18. So he's 23 a game on 37% shooting from three. And, 4 assists, 5 rebounds. And he was an all-star that year, I think, right? And
I think he was even all-NBA.
Yeah. And then since then, obviously, he had the big injury, and he's never shot better than, well, actually, with Indiana earlier in the year, he was shooting 36% from three. So he's like an average three-point shooter, right? And he can still score. He's still, even with the Rockets, he's been averaging 20 a game. So I guess I'm not sure. It's amazing how players so quickly sometimes go in the NBA from star player Victor Oladipo that anyone would love to have on their team to this version of Victor Oladipo, who like statistically, he's averaging three fewer points a game and like not quite shooting it as well. But like, is he really that different than he was a couple of years ago? So yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's something with the eye test. I haven't watched a ton of Rockets games where they just.
I think he still could contribute. I think in his role, like I think he was good for the Pacers. I do. I mean,
yeah. So
I don't think Oladipo's the number one guy, which is essentially what he's almost being tasked to be on Houston.
Yeah. So you slot him in as your third best guy or something. I think that's a great fit.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. And PJ. People have said his shooting is falling off. He looks washed. I mean, he doesn't have James Harden anymore, giving those great looks. So I think PJ could slot in nicely for the Bucks. For the Nets, for really any contending team who just needs a little size and shooting, right?
Yeah, I'll
reunite
go back to
PJ with the Nets.
Former self.
Reunite him with James.
No, thank you.
I wouldn't mind that.
I would mind that because it'd be good for the Nets.
Am I sneaky enjoying watching the Nets? No.
It's not sneaky at all.
Okay, let's go to my first team, the Charlotte Hornets of Charlotte. So they are now 20-18, sixth in the East. If I were them, I would, dare I say, be a buyer at the deadline because that 6 seed is wide open. And they're just legit pretty good, okay? And really what they need is some help at the center. Rolling out the Cody Zeller, Bismack, Biyombo combination isn't great. I would like PJ to see more minutes at the
PJ
center.
at the center position. It's not that hard.
But it's good. You need another one then. I mean, I don't want Cody
You got
or
the Bridges
Bismack to be
brother.
getting any minutes, mind you. I could, could they go after Al Horford? Could they go after a more bargain center? I don't know. I if they add another piece, I really think they could lock up that 6 seed. I don't know. This is a good team,
I have been contemplating for the last at least 3 to 4 days betting on them to be first in their division.
I don't know why you already haven't done that.
Yeah, I know. Well, they have a tough stretch of games coming up here. I think the next 4 or 5 games are tough.
And
but
Miami's been hot.
Miami has been hot. But after these next 5 games for the Hornets, I'm pretty sure they have the easiest strength of schedule in the league or close to it. And Miami has a pretty difficult schedule to end the year. So if they drop a couple games here with these next couple games, get that price up to maybe 7-1, 7.5-1, I'm pouncing.
Yeah, then your hands are tied, right? I mean, you're just a man who scours the seas for good odds. I was thinking today when I was looking at the standing, it's like we've had all this rigmarole about how the East is all topsy-turvy, and we look at it now, it's Sixers, Nets, Bucks, Heat, Celtics, top 5 seeds. It's like, okay, well, that's what we all thought they would be coming into the season.
Don't we have a bet on Pacers Bulls, though?
No.
Pacers, Celtics.
Celtics.
Never mind.
I'm feeling good.
The Pacers are a 10 seed, it must be mentioned. So I don't know why Kyle's feeling good. But
yeah, but the 5 and the 11 seed are separated by 3 games.
Yeah. So, it's not like they're the 13th seed. The one surprise in the East, we should say, which transitions nicely to Seth here, are the Raptors of Toronto / Tampa Bay, who are now 17-22, find themselves 11th in the East because they've had a lot of players out due to injuries and COVID. So obviously the big piece talked about at the deadline is Kyle Big Butt Lowry, biggest ass this side of the West Coast. So Seth, do you think they end up moving Lowry? Do you think they should move Lowry? If you were Masai Ujiri, would you do it?
Well, it is a stretch to think that I would know half as much as Masai Ujiri, but so I don't know what they'll do. Masai's unpredictable. I would trade Lowry though. I think he's got so much value right now. Assuming they could get the value I think they could, which I feel like he's one of the few players who's at least theoretically on the market, right? That a contending team would legitimately feel like, all right, he puts me over the hump where I can win the championship now. Like if you join the Bucks, if you join the Sixers, they could say to themselves, they could say to themselves, all right, now we have the goods to beat the Nets.
Yeah, I mean, he would be the best player available at the trade deadline,
So I think given that logic, they should be able to get a haul back for him, which I think this year there's just too many challenges for Toronto, for Tampa Bay, because they're in Tampa Bay. They're, all this talk about how difficult the bubble was, and no, they're not in a bubble, but none of them get to be at their homes. They're, figuring out a living situation for a year and having to do that, and, all of the extra stress and organization that comes with that. And then just all the COVID, like players being out because of the health and safety protocol and just struggles. I think it's time to make a change. And then the other thing is okay, so you lose Kyle Lowry and you've got Fred VanVleet to step in at point guard.
That's the thing, right? It's not like, okay, we're trading our best player, we're tanking. It's like we have our heir apparent who's basically a younger Kyle Lowry and plays the exact same way, waiting in the wings, right?
Exactly. So again, similar to the Kings, I love a lot of their players. And I think having a core of Van Vliet and Siakam, and then adding in like Norm Powell, OG, and Anunoby, and some of those other guys, Stanley Johnson, like that's a core I'm fine with working around. So
Yeah.
I would sell, see what I can get. And I'm still like bullish on the Raptors' future.
Yeah.
But I don't think this year is in the cards for them.
Agreed. Kyle, anything more to add on the Raptors?
No, I'd love to see Lowry go to Miami, like I just mentioned. Though.
Miami, perfect fit. Philly, perfect fit. The Clippers would love to get him.
Miami, I feel like just that culture, Miami is so perfect for Kyle Lowry.
Kyle or PJ, if either one of them goes there, it's like they were made to be in Miami. Kyle, let's talk about your next team. Our very own Chicago Bulls. What do you think they should do at the deadline?
And this is a tough one because some nights they're so fun to watch and look great. Other nights they just get completely demolished. Obviously, I want to say they need to be sellers, but that's because they need to sell. Most likely, like Markkanen. I don't know if his trade value is really ever going to be higher than it might be right now. Ever since he came back from that injury, he's been aggressive. He's been hitting his threes. He's been just a great player for them. Blocks on one end, hustling down the floor, getting a wide open three, stuff like that. I'm pretty much out on Wendell Carter Jr. at this point. I just don't know what more we need to see from him. You know, he's had his injuries here and there. Yeah, that hasn't been great, but he just hasn't turned into the player I think that, we expected him to be. So we need to part with him, is my opinion. I think we wanted to get rid of Levine, but the leaps that he's made over the last 2 years is just enormous. And like, he's the perfect type of player that we have right now to build around.
Yeah.
His first year as an all-star, right? He's just looks incredible. His playmaking abilities have really improved over the last 2 years. Yeah, he's still not the best defensive player, but he's so much more of a at least average defender than what we've ever seen him be. To what he does on offense kind of offsets that for the most part.
Yeah.
And I don't really know, man. I don't know about
it's
Kobe
tough.
White. Like, what do we do? He's shown flashes too, but he's just way too inconsistent in my opinion. So
Kobe, yeah.
Thaddeus Young has been great for the team.
Thaddeus is definitely the one that teams would be hankering for.
Right, exactly.
Veteran that can help winning. I had written down here same thing. I said I think if I were them, I would keep Thaddeus and trade Lowry, Markkanen, because
if possible.
To me, if we're trying to build a decent team around Levine, we just need 3-and-D players, defensive stoppers. I think Patrick Williams will grow into that. I've been very impressed with him on the defensive end this year, covering the likes of LeBron and like other just big wings.
He had a great offensive game the other night too, like incredible.
And he's shown flashes on offense. So I think he's the perfect player to pair next to Levine. Lowry is not, because he's not an elite defender, and he's just supposed to be a shooter, and he's a 36% career three-point shooter. So what is he really offering to us, right? So I agree with you. His value is an all-time high. I would let him go. But we can add a few pieces on the fringes and try to make a playoff run, and I wouldn't be mad about it. I think we're not going to be tanking. Like, we're not that bad, so we might as well just add a few pieces on the fringes, maybe trade Lowry and see what happens in the play-in.
Right, we have no chance at the title, obviously, but
right.
Chicago, especially with the news that we received out of the Bears camp today, we're hankering for some type of postseason team.
Why would you even bring that up to me? I'm already at an all-time low after hearing that news. Sad, if you haven't heard it, our big splash for quarterback this offseason was not Russell Wilson, not even Sam Darnold, but it was in fact Andy Dalton.
Dalton, baby.
Who looked atrocious on the Cowboys despite all the weapons he had, and we have no weapons. So is he going to be any better?
What is that gonna, Kyle? If that was the last straw for your Bears fandom, are we getting anywhere close to that for your Bulls fandom? Like, what do
No,
they have to do to?
no, we
Honestly,
were there with the Jim Boylan era
yeah.
Bulls, but
Okay,
with the change in management and
you're back in.
Billy Donovan,
Yeah. I don't know
once
about
we made
you,
those
Kyle,
moves,
but
once we essentially just changed GMs,
yeah.
our GM infrastructure, I was back in on the Bulls, especially with everything that's been happening with Levine, like I said this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know what Billy Donovan could do. Um, so I'm not out. I'm not out on the Bulls by any means. I think our future is extremely bright.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I don't know about you, but and I feel this way too, and I think most Bulls fans do. It's like, this seems kind of fun. I enjoy it. Like I like watching Levine. Billy Donovan is a professional coach. It seems like we have a good front office, so that's all you can ask for, really. And we'll
That's
see
fun.
see what happens going forward. All right, I'm gonna talk about my second team and my third team just real quick. I had to hit on these two
Of
because I think
course,
they're
he
gonna
has
be
more than
busy.
two.
They're going to be busy at the trade deadline. First of all, the Spurs, who sit right now in the 7th seed in the West at 20-16. Very interesting mix of players in the Spurs. They have these veterans in DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge, to a lesser extent, Patty Mills, that teams would be interested in maybe. Although it would seem LaMarcus, he's not playing anymore. They know they're going to try to trade him. I don't know if there's a trade out there for him. I think he might get bought out, actually, which is kind of, it happens so fast sometimes, doesn't it? He was just a solid player for all those years, and now he just has no trade value. And maybe rightfully so. He's been pretty terrible this year. So if I were them, I would definitely try to trade LaMarcus as they are. I would probably try to trade DeRozan. They have a nice young core of players. I mean, I had to write them
One of
all
my
down because there's
favorites.
so
One of my
many. But
favorites in the league.
DeJounte, Derek White, my boy, my beloved, Keldon Johnson, Lonnie Walker, the fourth, it must be said, Jakob Pertl, Devin Vassell. I mean, are one of those guys going to be a star you can build around? Maybe, maybe not. But there's a lot of nice pieces that they can at least develop there. So if I were them, I would just get rid of the veterans and ride with this young team. I mean, I don't mind keeping DeRozan, but I mean, you are the 7th seed now, but you're obviously not a championship contender. I like all those young guys. It's time to transition.
100%. Yeah, I don't know. This is just like such a new proposition for Popovich. Having to actually kind of be forced to play rookies and younger players as much as he has been, just because he doesn't have those Tony Parkers, Manu Ginobili's, those type of players anymore. So it's been interesting, but it's honestly really impressive what he's been able to do with the team. Obviously sitting in the 7th seed in the West when I didn't really pencil them in, I guess, for a playoff team in the first place.
I do wonder, like, how much longer does Pop coach? Like, what's his end goal? When does he feel happy stepping away?
He doesn't feel the drive anymore. That urge doesn't burn in his heart.
Yeah.
Seth asked him last week. That's why he knows.
That's what he said. We're having a glass of wine.
All right, real quick, I want to hit on one more team because I do actually think that they might trade like 2 or 3 players. The Orlando Magic, sitting at 13-26, 14th in the East, a lot due to injuries. Right, they lost Markelle Fultz and Jonathan Isaac for the year. So they might be sitting around saying, okay, we're going to get those guys back next year. Let's see what happens. But this is obviously a lost year for them, and they have veterans that people are interested in. We've talked about Vucevic. My guess is they keep him at least. But the other ones, I mean, they have Evan Fournier people might be interested in. Aaron Gordon.
Don't Google his last name.
What's that?
Don't Google Fournier's last name.
Why?
Just don't do it.
I have to now.
I highly recommend against it.
Okay, well, you can't stop me. Okay, I Googled it.
Sam's response.
Oh, I think I've seen this before, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't Google it, folks. So I bet, if I were guessing, I bet they do sell Fournier. Maybe Terrence Ross too. He could be a spark plug off the bench for a contender. I don't know.
Yeah,
Aaron Gordon. Who is Aaron Gordon even? What could
I don't know
be?
if Aaron Gordon knows who he is.
It's pretty clear that he doesn't. So I don't know. I almost feel like if I was the Orlando Magic GM, I'd be like, listen, we had our run with these core players. What did we do? We lost in the first round twice. Let's blow it up. I would keep Vooch though.
I hate to say it, but
just
I
go
would
for a
keep
full
Vooch as
rebuild.
well.
Yeah.
I mean,
Anyone else would be fair game if I get a good offer, though, I think.
yeah, I would trade everyone but Vooch and try to build around him.
I love Jonathan Isaac in the future, too.
I hope he
Yeah,
comes
I mean,
back,
they're not going to trade
back to his
Isaac
normal
now.
self.
Anyways.
No.
Yeah.
How he was last year.
Well, I think it might be time to transition to the madness of March. It's what you guys have been waiting for.
The
You
Ides
want to
of
know how
March.
to win your office pool. And luckily, you have two people on here who have never watched college basketball in their young lives. So we're here to help you. We want to go over quickly our first round upset potential teams. And then we all want to just say our final four in our championship so that everyone can laugh at us when our brackets are busted within the first weekend. Kyle, actually, I'm going to start, Kyle, and you can just take it after there because I do have one upset in mind. I know you probably have like 5, so I'll get mine out of the way first. I like Utah State over Texas Tech. Our listeners might ask themselves, Sam, have you watched a minute of either of these teams play all year? The answer is no. But after doing some research, it seems like this is the perfect opportunity for Utah State and a terrible matchup for Texas Tech. Texas Tech is the 304th team in the nation in three-point rate. Can't be good. There's barely more than 304 teams in the nation. So basically, they do a lot of their scoring inside. What are they going to find inside? A 7-foot star. Now, I might mess up his name. Kyle, you can correct me. Neemias Queta? Neemias.
Close enough.
Okay. So, Utah State, on the backs of Neemias, they block 14.6% of their opponent's shots. Okay? That's insane. That's 7th in the league. 42.9% teams shoot against them inside of the three-point arc. So I just feel like if we have a team that's not good at three-point shooting against a team that protects the rim, one of the best in the nation, that to me is those are the perfect ingredients in my little cauldron for an upset. Kyle, do you support me in this, being someone who actually watches college basketball?
Yeah, that's a fantastic call. That was they're one of my top upsets of the first round as well. Pretty much everything you mentioned. Texas Tech is like a very not trustworthy offense. As you mentioned, not great from three. They're going up against honestly one of the best defenses in the nation. Utah State is 8th in adjusted defensive efficiency in the entire nation, 15th in defensive effective field goal percentage, and 5th in defensive offensive rebounding rate. So they allow one of the least amount of offensive rebounds in the league, in the nation. So really just one of those perfect setups for an 11-6 upset on the first round here.
I did not know any of that. I don't know any of their players, but I already picked them in my bracket. So
You must have had a sense. Seth, why don't you tell us your upset, which I know is going to be Syracuse. Just tell me why.
I reject the fact that you think I'm going to pick Syracuse as my upset just because I went there.
A lot of people are picking them, actually. They're a popular upset pick.
I'm actually picking Syracuse because I went there. And because I don't know anything about college basketball this year, but I do know that year after year, teams struggle against Syracuse in March Madness because of their zone defense. And that's Coach Boeheim's big scheme. It's his coaching hallmark. And it's very hard to replicate that zone defense in practice because when you're playing against the second unit, you don't have these long guys with 7-foot wingspan and quick feet like Syracuse often does, on their team. So it's really hard to prepare against that when most of the year you're playing against man-to-man, and then suddenly you're playing against this like enormous zone defense. So oftentimes Syracuse succeeds. Several years ago, I think they were the 11 seed, 9 seed, something like that, and they made it. Yeah, they made it to a Final Four. So who knows? They're in the same bracket as beat Illinois of Urbana-Champaign, and it'll be interesting to see if they could possibly meet in the Elite Eight, and we could have a clash of our alma maters. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be really fun. All right, Kyle, give us a couple upsets. I know you've been hankering.
I do want to say I'm not convinced Syracuse wins that game. Either way, my favorite upset.
I mean, who is really? They're an underdog anyway. We're not convinced of it.
My favorite upset of the entire first round is none other than the Ohio Bobcats against the 4-seed Virginia. Virginia hasn't played in weeks due to COVID. I don't even think they've begun practicing for March Madness yet. So who's to say they're even going to be fielding a full, their normal starting five? We don't know. And second of all, Ohio's just good. They'll have the best player on the court in the matchup in Jason Preston. He's a third-year player, NBA caliber player, might go even like late first round, if not early second round. He's averaging 17 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals a game.
He's the LaMelo Ball.
Yeah, he's essentially like yeah, that's a great way to put it. He's shooting 53% from the field and 40% from 3. Like, he's just electric. So for those of you listening, you're welcome. Put all your money on Ohio in the first round.
Ohio, Utah State, book it.
That's 2 of the 3 legs of my first round parlay that I've put down already. Let's see, who else?
Give me one more good one.
One more good one. Okay. I'm going to stay with the same region, the West. So it's not a for sure thing, though. Obviously, it's a underdog. But
these are just suggestions for the listeners.
This is
Ohio,
also
who's definitely going to win.
This is also a play-in team, so it really relies on them winning the play-in to even make it. But Drake,
the rapper.
Yes, he's here. Obviously, I've talked to you, Sam, many times that matchup would be against USC, who has arguably maybe the second pick in the NBA draft, and Evan Mobley on their team.
Yeah,
who's just incredible player. But the thing is, if Drake, they have a player named Hemphill. If he plays, then that's so this is one of my picks that I'm waiting for the last minute to get confirmation if Hemphill is going to be playing. If he's going to be playing, he offers so much more to that offense to be able to beat USC. And that's probably my other my dark horse pick as an upset would be Drake against USC.
I love it. Book it. I'm picking Jay-Z against UCLA, so hopefully those two will meet in the final. Speaking of the final, let's all list our Final Fours in our championship just for funsies. I'll go first. Thank you for asking. So I'll take Baylor.
Going first?
I'll take Baylor out of the South. In the Midwest, I'll take Illinois.
Baylor.
I mean, I have to. What's that?
Baylor. I hardly know her.
You really had to get that one in there, huh?
I did.
Midwest, I'll take Illinois. I got to talk about my boys for a second here. I mean, this is, like I said earlier, before the pod, our best team since 2005 when we won the championship. I'm getting a little nervous because it seems like every expert is picking us to make the championship, so that always makes me nervous. But we are, I would say, the second or third best team in the country. Just won the Big Ten championship in a nail-biter over Ohio State. I mean, I don't know. I feel really confident in this team. Of course, we could lose to anyone as the tournament, but I really feel like we can play to anyone with anyone. I feel like if this does end up being the matchup on that side of the bracket, Baylor and Illinois, we lost to them very early in the season, but I feel like we're just so much better now. I think we can get past them again. So I have them. I have Gonzaga in the West. I mean, they're undefeated. My hands are tied. And then I feel like the East, the East is one where I could really see a lot of teams coming out of that one. I don't know. I just don't have that much confidence from Michigan after seeing my team, Illinois, beat them without our best player.
And Michigan lost one of their best players too for the tournament.
Yeah, is he going to be
Livers
back or
is
not?
out,
Okay, so I have Alabama coming out of there right now. They're second in defensive efficiency in the nation, so I really like that kind of mold as a tournament team. So that's what I have right now. I'm not really married to that, but and then I have Illinois and Gonzaga in the final, and Illinois winning. Obviously, I mean my hands are tied.
What was your score?
I don't have a score written down, but I'll go 67-64.
Okay.
I haven't actually filled out a bracket yet, so I don't know.
I have the same two teams in the championship right now, but again, this is just my first bracket. It's far from being complete, so this is definitely probably going to change, but I do also have Illinois and Gonzaga making it.
I feel like every expert has those two in the championship, which makes me nervous because that's what I'm going to end up picking.
I mean, Gonzaga is just like way too good.
Yeah.
Tilly's too good. And then what's his name? I can't think of it right now.
Their point guard, Suggs.
Suggs. Yes, that's exactly.
That's a little bit of college basketball knowledge for you, Kyle.
I said Tilly and I meant Timmy. They used to have a Tilly on their team. Now it's a Timmy. Timmy's like extremely underrated. Like if Jalen Suggs wasn't on the team, Timmy would most likely be talked about as being one of the best players in the nation. but because there's Suggs, everyone's going to talk about him. But so obviously they're two of my final four. And then, like you said, the East, man, it's just that's such a wide open bracket in my opinion. I have UConn coming out of there, but I was extremely tempted to also make it St. Bonaventure. St. Bonaventure is also my team they're going to be my Loyola Chicago of like 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The Bonnies are going to make a run. They're going to go dancing.
I mean, the thing is, we always have one of our final four be a seed lower than 3. So you almost got to take a shot with one,
Right. So, I definitely like it to be a team coming out of the East just because I'm not sold on Michigan, obviously, without Livers. Alabama, even though they're good, I don't think that they're not one of the best 2 seeds that there are. And then coming out of the South, I actually have Arkansas over Baylor in that Elite 8 game.
I could see it. Seth, what's your final four? Syracuse and 3 others?
Actually, just Syracuse playing themselves twice. No, actually, I have Gonzaga and Illinois out of respect. And out of the South, I've got Nova, just institutional, longevity, awareness. And I've got Texas out of the East because
I could see Texas coming out of these too.
I used to like them a lot. And I have Texas and Nova in the final with Texas winning 67-61.
That would be wild.
You have Texas over Villanova?
Yep.
I have Villanova losing in the first round.
My justification is that I have none.
It's hard to argue with that. Well, I can't wait for all of our brackets to be busted after the first few games. Looking forward to it. My favorite time of the year. That'll do it for this episode. Everyone check us out on Instagram and Twitter. I started tweeting. I learned how to tweet. So at sportball_pod on both. And you can see gifs of Shaq wiggling his shoulders if you're so interested. Any other final thoughts, boys? I know, Seth, you don't have any, but Kyle, I know you do.
Lastly, Morehead State over West Virginia and Syracuse in the round of 32. Morehead State's going to the Sweet 16, baby.
It's hard to argue with Morehead, am I right?
Can't go wrong.